In the vast galaxy of cartoons, few figures prove as thunderously insatiable as Richard Watterson, the bubblegum pink father of Elmore's most chaotically lovable family. His appetite, already an oral legend, pounds like a war drum from the very first second he appears on screen, and his belly, an unmapped territory, rises like a living monument to unbridled gluttony. Inside him coexists the innocence of a child who never learned to curb his cravings, and the recklessness of a conqueror who storms the realms of junk food without once looking back, laying waste to everything. But what if we told you that behind his hunger lies something far deeper and way more disturbing? Stick around to the end, because the twist will blow your mind. Every whistle of the kettle, every aroma drifting out of the kitchen, every tiny crinkle of a candy wrapper becomes for Richard a bugle that proclaims, "Charge!" His tale is that of a perpetual pilgrim who never finds rest because the finish line is always one bite farther away. Of a tragic hero whose Achilles heel is not an arrow, but any food that can promise a second of pleasure on his tongue. Today we unearth, with the solemnity of archaeologists of excess, the most delirious passages of that endless campaign. And we shall do so without respite, recounting, with over-the-top drama, how his jaws have become the crater of a volcano, knowing no satiety, how each banquet has left scars of sauce, crumbs, and wrappers in the very fabric of reality itself, and how, despite the risk to his own existence, he continues surfing waves of fries, burgers, and molten cheese as though it were his inexorable destiny. One morning so laden with emotional storm clouds that even the birds seemed on the verge of calling a strike, the Wattersons chose to combat misfortune by summoning the circular oracle of pizza. Nicole, her brow furrowed like a marble statue hardened by rage, refused to pick up the phone because anger pulsed through her veins. Anais yawned in sheer boredom. Darwin splashed in an imaginary bucket of childhood anxiety. Then, in a cruel twist of irony, the task of contacting the temple of dough and cheese fell to Richard. From the first ring, it was clear that temptation had opened an abyss at his feet. A family one, but divided into fifths, he boomed with a trembling voice, and tattoo on each fraction a concept of culinary hedonism. Classic margarita, compassionate vegetarian, briny surf, caveman turf, and an inferno of extra meat. And by the gods, include a toy. The operator, a poor mortal without armor, tried to object with reason. "Sir, we don't provide toys." But Richard, half offended and half herald of whim, repeated the demand as if invoking a higher law. Shortly before, and this worsened the blasphemy, Larry, guardian of Joyful Burger, had dared refuse him service after warning that the roaming stomach had already demolished 12,000 calories, a figure capable of melting any nutritionist's logic, and that, according to Larry, could only be purged if Richard literally burned like a human torch. Far from withdrawing humbly, our Colossus decided that every denial would be punished with a macabre celebration. Ice cream chugged in gulps, ketchup streams sucked like forbidden nectar, and mustard licked with predator frenzy. Thus the prelude to his legend was forged, proof that when the universe closes the door of moderation, he blows out the windows and hurls himself at the banquet table with the ferocity of a comet seeking collision. What truly launched his reputation to the borders of culinary mythology was the apotheosis in which, deprived of his usual ration, he resolved to become the Prometheus of greasy cuisine and invented the Schnuzzelwurst, a tubular aberration where meats of dubious pedigree, oceans of semi-melted cheese, cascades of crispy bacon, and bread layers slathered in lard clustered endlessly. The ritual, executed on the countertop like arcane alchemy, included cries of invocation, "By the power of cheese! By the glory of bacon!" and culminated in a result so macabre that Anais, being rational, sweated butter in reflex that would have horrified any physician. More than 3,400 calories twisted into a spiral, bathed in the fluorescent kitchen light, awaited their creator. Yet the drama did not end there. Faithful to his devouring patriarch instinct, Richard refused to split that infernal creature for his heirs, and with the arrogance of an emperor distributing crowns, announced he would make 5 identical replicas, one for each family member, because greatness, in his philosophy, is not shared in slices, but served whole. The Schnuzzelwurst, living grease, became not only food, but biochemical threat. a dark meteor of cholesterol that could stagger an adult elephant's health, and yet was greeted by Richard with open arms, as if meeting a long-lost, greasy friend. Apparently tired of watching his reflection tremble under the weight of binges, Richard proclaimed a personal revolution. "I'm going on a diet," an exclamation that echoed off the walls with the skepticism of a bad joke. Indeed, the scene that followed might have been penned by a writer of black comedy. In his shopping cart lay timid green salads beside mountains of diet-friendly desserts, guilt-free pancakes, fit shakes, and hyper-protein bars tasting of sugary charcoal. Each dish represented a distinct nutritional school: keto, paleo, high protein, occasionally vegan, as though Richard had decided to embrace every trend and none at once so as not to forfeit anything. The fervor lasted barely longer than it takes the moon to make 1.5 turns. Come midnight, the Titan raided the pantry with a thief's stealth and began an orgy of clandestine chewing. By sunrise, the scale registered new peaks, and in every corner of the home appeared proof of his double life: a chocolate bar behind the TV remote, chips between toilet paper rolls, ice cream hidden inside an empty banana peel. Thus his diet proved a mirage, a wobbling punching toy that toppled each time hunger bared its claws. Gumball and Darwin, eyes painted with distress, imposed martial law in the kitchen. Richard, however, broke every lock with the flair of an escape artist, emerging from the fridge shelves, lips shining with mayonnaise, demonstrating that no door can hold when will falters and the stomach roars like an engine out of control. Frustrated, the children resorted to a plan blending mercy with pedagogical cruelty, tricking him with food promises placed at the far end of grueling exercise circuits, a donkey chasing a carrot. What followed was a sports film montage playing to a carnival of grease, spurred on by visions of burgers hanging like guiding stars. Richard ran further than ever before, lifted improvised weights with zeal, jumped rope until the house's foundations throbbed. A miracle occurred. Muscles blossomed beneath his pink skin, and for a fleeting instant, it seemed the statue of the glutton had morphed into a suburban Hercules. Woe to the neighborhood! With newfound physique, Richard stalked avenues like an arrogant titan, hoisting cars to impress pedestrians, snapping street signs like twigs, terrorizing anyone daring to hold a bag of fries without invitation. Yet the jungle of desires always demands tribute, and the umbilical cord tying him to food proved tougher than any workout. One afternoon, the distant aroma of a pizzeria summoned his true nature. Vision clouded, abdomen growled, and his steel will melted like cheese on a grill. Penitent, he embraced his kids with tomato sauce tears and begged to atone. Atonement, predictably, meant another culinary tour. Pizza, Mexican, Chinese, burritos, ice cream, toasted tacos, burgers, an endless parade. His pledge of restraint died before the first pizza box hit the table. The universe, mocking, prepared a subtler test. A rumor of a secret item, a sacred burger grail whose name none knew, and that could only be obtained by pronouncing it at Joyful Burger's counter. Gumball's whisper made Richard's ear vibrate like a satellite dish. A second later, the Colossus was smashing through walls, gardens, and hedges, sprinting malward with prophetic urgency. Thus began the Phantom Menu Odyssey, visiting every Joyful Burger in Elmore and culminating in Larry's literal capture, bound beneath interrogation lamps, fit for noir. To break his silence, Richard staged villainous acts, forcing Bergie the mascot to swallow rival fare, threatening to deep-fry the poor bird's fingers like mozzarella sticks. Only after such torment did the quest reveal its final clause: devour a full combo meal in every franchise restaurant within an hour. Stopwatches sliced the air, and Richard, possessed by pseudo-religious fervor, demolished 22 combos. Calories stacked like bricks in an impossible wall, over 23,000, yet his eyes still shone. At the final counter he received, trembling, the MacGuffin, a monster of bun, meat, and mystery, haloed by sizzling fat. Irony reigned. Trying to bite, his jaw refused. Capacity was reached. Even his mandibles could not break physics' rule that a full vessel admits no more. Yet mandibular failure dulled neither reputation nor hunger, for the next feat arrived through the supernatural. Carrie the Ghost, desperate to taste again, possessed Gumball and unleashed a binge festival, leaving the blue cat barrel-wasted. When havoc overflowed, they sought counsel from the one guru who understood such anxiety. Richard. He, Oracle of Dissatisfaction, led Carrie straight to the kitchen. Together, Spectre and host stripped shelves bare. Estimates suggest roughly 20,000 calories fell that night, equal to a large American family's daily provision. For Richard, merely another sigh in his endless banquet. Pots clanged a macabre symphony, appliances shivered in dread. The house reeked like a battlefield, where butter was gunpowder. Dawn revealed floors carpeted in crumbs, sauce-stained constellations, and a Richard satisfied yet never full. Hunger, true ghost that it is, always returns. Hardly had the mess dissipated when the bewitched board game, Dodger Dare, dropped like an envoy of chaos. Richard, Gumball, and Darwin, deaf to warnings, played. Each card was ridiculous sentence. So close, no hands. Speak backwards till rain. And Crown Jewel, devour 100 hot dogs in under a minute. For humans, a suicidal pact. For Richard, light breakfast. Darwin, magically tethered so his arm mirrored Richard's, became a physical allegory. While Richard swallowed sausages like air pills, the fish's limbs scoffed in tandem. Barely 20 seconds, and the 100 hot dogs were gone, leaving empty buns and stunned silence. Richard, vinegar-thirsty, lunged at a jar of pickled eggs and emptied it, 12 slick orbs sliding down his throat like water. The game meant to shame. Richard made it homage, then reclined like a content deity. When Nicole traveled and left him in charge, the house fell into luminous anarchy. Convinced lawless freedom was the secret ingredient of happiness, Richard dragged the kids through a supermarket where every shelf was an amusement park. Rolling in cereal, spraying sauces like confetti, biting exotic fruits prepay. Nothing safe. The frenzy drew Elmore's masses, spawning a bacchanal that ended an invasion of their home, turned gluttonous circus. To retake territory, the trio disguised as pizza deliverers to infiltrate their own house. Boxes stacked like a wall hid a secret. Richard had devoured the cargo en route. 48 family pies totaling 4,800 calories before crossing the threshold. Doors opened, they entered, and amid mob cheers, one heard the hero's weary lament. Goal achieved, yet his stomach was a boiler at the edge of tolerance. Destiny's writers then jabbed his emotional wound. A visit from Frankie, his absentee father. After the bizarre Ratman dance, half-clandestine jig-summoning plagues, Richard discovered progenitor was a petty rogue. The blow cracked his self-parody armor and plunged him into sadness he strove to quell with food. Joyful Burger became confessional. Between bites of gargantuan fries, Richard listed disappointments, tripping over gastronomic metaphors. I'm in an existential pickle, swallowing more as tears mixed with barbecue sauce. Conservative estimates place the vigil at 14,000 calories, though witnesses swear Larry supplied extra trays, pushing it perhaps to 50,000. After the final fizzy drop, Richard learned no menu fills the absence of a father. Yet, true to paradox, he ordered dessert, for melancholy tastes easier with sugar. Irony pinned him next to his curmudgeonly neighbor Mr. Robinson under house arrest. Believing forced cohabitation might soften hearts, Gumball and Darwin filled a bathtub with molten cheese. To the world a prank. To Richard, prophecy fulfilled. 20 years dreaming of diving in that viscous yellow ocean. He submerged like a mystic baptized in dairy fat and surfaced dripping cheddar, proclaiming reality made sense. 300 liters equaled 1.3 million calories, a bomb enough to make any cardiologist resign. Unsated, Richard accused Robinson of stealing leftover cheese and clomped downstairs hunting crumbs, lacteal obsession nearly messianic. Each gooey strand a destiny line none would take. Captivity turned absurd when both prisoners were stuffed in a dumpster, rolled downhill, and smashed into traffic via Gumball and Darwin's friendship scheme. Amid chaos, Richard swallowed the only key, proving devouring instinct crosses from food to objects. As the dumpster careened, Richard mused, cheese-scented belches, on the thin line between hunger and fate. The crash seemed fatal. All emerged unscathed, perhaps cushioned by a thick film of calories. After decades of feats, accountants of reality tried to tally the epic. Calculators trembled. 1,546,365 calories have marched through Richard's gullet since his first on-screen cookie. That number hides universes of donuts, soda oceans, fry mountains, sausage forests, cheese cordilleras, barbecue sauce desserts. It equals stacking 7,000 Richards in energy, lighting a small neighborhood for weeks, feeding a regiment for months. Yet he stands, wobbling yet smiling, childlike, in denial or pretense, each heartbeat a drum fighting an impossible war. And what lesson emerges beyond easy laughter? Perhaps certainty that appetite, dressed in compulsion, rivals cataclysms. Richard Watterson mirrors our hungers, not just for food, but distractions and quick comforts. His journey asks us to scan our own emotional pantries and ask whether we're dousing problems in hot sauce that actually need tenderness. Cartoon exaggeration reminds of elemental truths. Moderation's a fragile compass. Hearts break from loneliness, as from cholesterol. Toys on pizza don't mend trauma, and even a cheese bath can't drown deep sorrow. Yet we cannot hate him. Richard is a child in a giant body, chasing the perfect flavor, that bite that might still the echo of something long lost. His legend is written in sauce, sketched in crumbs, signed with burps. The story stays open, for while fridges exist to raid, waiters to terrify, secret menus rumored, he will appear, eyes sparkling, fork raised. Chroniclers record with solemnity, do an emperor of cholesterol and whisper, half worry, half admiration, that his deeds defy arithmetic, medicine, metaphysics. Perhaps food gods watch, for Richard's shows will severed from reason, yet wedded to craving can move mountains, or swallow them. We, fascinated spectators, keep counting calories like shooting stars. Each flavor burst another verse in this greasy epic burning, with the undying glow of a fryer always lit. Thus closes this chapter, intent not on moralizing, but on narrating, dramatically and in lavish detail, the digestive adventures of Elmore's most famous glutton. No clock ends it, no scale captures the magnitude, only a horizon of plates multiplying like mirages. The future may bring strict diets, impossible surgeries, athletic redemptions. Yet, if we've learned one thing, it is that Richard Watterson is the immovable hero of his saga. He will fall, rise, brush off crumbs, and embark on the next culinary crusade with the same fervor. Perhaps one day, he will find the legendary bite that finally grants satiety. Perhaps that moment never comes, and his story remains paused between feast and feast. Meanwhile, this account, over 6,000 words penned under the sign of cheese, bacon, and caloric glory, stands as testimony. For as long as grills and ovens burn, and hearts beat to desire's frantic rhythm, a Richard Watterson will stride through the doorway toward another gastronomic adventure, out to prove that his stomach is, truly, a universe without borders.